Hello and welcome to Unprofessional Engineering. My name is James.
And you got Luke?
Luke, we're taking a look at the history of car safety in this episode.
I can't believe we haven't done this one before.
Well, you come up with these great ideas over time, and I really appreciate it.
Because there's a lot of stuff in here. Hopefully we can get to some of these in more detail, because each one of these innovations is pretty amazing.
Yeah, so we're going to blow through just like a ton of stuff that went on, and it's kind of funny as you go through it when some of these things finally showed up. But some of them are really cool, and a lot of great engineering goes into it, so maybe we can make some episodes about those.
Perhaps.
I love ideas that turn into more ideas.
That's always nice.
Yeah. All right, so the history of car safety. I'm told it probably started after the first recorded automobile fatality on August 31st, 1869 in Ireland. Did you see that?
I did not.
So that kind of brought awareness that there needs to be some safety for the people
In
driving
Ireland?
these. Yeah. As well as safety for the pedestrians. So with that said, I think somebody probably got plowed down in the street by someone going all of 12 miles per hour.
Yeah,
or something.
how is there an auto? Didn't these vehicles was it a pedestrian that got killed? You said? Or
I don't know for sure, but
Okay.
I'm guessing it is because of that statement.
How fast could a car be going?
I don't know. But I thought it was kind of interesting that awareness, or this all started in 69 when Carl Benz only built his first automobile in 1885. And that's kind of acknowledged as the first practical, gas or diesel engine automobile. So that was almost 20 years, 15 years before that. So
Yeah. Wow.
Go car safety.
No kidding.
So what do you have as the first things going on to make the car safe?
I'm not reading any of this from an infographic.
You would not do that. I know that.
That wouldn't allow me to cut and paste. But so probably the very first thing was, you needed to drive these things at night, right? So I have, in the 1880s, the earliest automobiles and even buggies, they would use kerosene or acetylene lamps on the front ends of their cars with reflective mirrors.
Okay.
But could you imagine having to gotten light your headlights?
And then you're driving and it doesn't smash and burn you up?
Well, I'm guessing there were some issues because soon after, 1889, so this is 9 years later or so, the actual first electric headlamp was introduced because the filaments were a little more brighter and they worked better, obviously, than the reflective kerosene explosive tanks on the front of your car that were lit.
I feel like it's probably just a better idea to be don't
drive
drive at dark.
Yeah, like old people. You don't drive at night because you can't see.
Well, let's be fair. They shouldn't drive at all, but they do, so they shouldn't drive at night.
So, slight segue. We normally don't do these two this early in the show.
Yeah, that is pretty early.
How do you feel about retesting drivers, and what age do you think retesting should happen at?
I think 65 is when you get retested.
So you have to get retested. Is that actually happening?
No, I think you should have to.
You should get retested.
Yeah, this is all according to James. 65, you should have to get retested.
And then
then 70, and then maybe
every 3 weeks.
Yeah, then very often.
Yeah, I've been around some pretty bad drive. My mom is getting not so great, and she's not that old. She's just the reaction time is what it
really
is. Speed limits are higher, your reaction time has to be faster.
I'd love to hear everyone else's thoughts on that, especially some of our older listeners. Unprofessionalengineering@gmail.com. Let us know. Oh, that's a good question though. Ask me again when I'm 65 and I bet I have a different answer. Okay, so what's next? Because I don't start until the early-ish 1910s.
Okay, so the first speedometer was introduced by Oldsmobile.
Oh, yeah.
This was the first time in history that drivers had the ability to monitor their own speed.
And I suppose that is a good safety feature to have. Does that mean there weren't speed limits until
No, there actually weren't speed limits, because you got to think most of the roads they were on were probably country roads and stuff like that. But I would imagine that the limiting factor in 1901 would not be
the
how
vehicle.
Fast the car could go. It would be like how much your body could take. Could you imagine being in one of these vehicles
around
on
in that thing?
On a horse road? And it'd be terrible.
It doesn't sound fun. I get angry when I feel bumps now. Speaking of bumps, did you see that sinkhole in Pittsburgh that ate the bus?
I did. Did you see the Halloween costumes that were inspired by it?
Isn't that great?
So fun fact.
Oh, let's hear it.
You talked about the first death overall. The first recorded fatal accident in the U.S. happened 2 years before in 1899 in New York City. The victim was a guy by the name of Henry S. Bliss.
Wow, Henry.
How about that being your legacy? I died.
You got to be known for something. I mean,
guess.
some of us, like you and I, are going to be famous and well known for this, but at least he has that going for him.
Yeah.
Okay, so now what do you got for me?
We can probably jump into some of your stuff. I jumped to like 1914.
Okay, so often viewed, this is what my stolen webpage said, often viewed as the first safety feature is the four-wheel hydraulic brake system in a Duesenberg Model A in 1922. Now, I read that and I'm like, well, that doesn't seem exactly right because I don't really agree. If you listen to our, One Hit Wonder Inventors episode, we talk about Mary Anderson, who was a cattle rancher from Alabama and invented the windshield wipers. And that was back in like 1914 or something like that.
I so don't remember our episodes sometimes.
I know. It was
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, there's so many of them, and they're all so good that you can't store it all. So also in that same time frame, in 1914, Florence Lawrence created the first turn signal. And those seem like pretty big safety enhancements to me. I understand that the hydraulic brake system, four-wheel brake versus two-wheel brake, which seems crazy that they even needed to think of that. I understand that's a bigger improvement, but I still feel like windshield wipers are a big safety thing.
Oh, heck yeah.
And turn signals. Maybe not for you so much, but for the other vehicles on the road, right? I still get angry when people don't use their turn signal. It's totally cool if I don't, but it's very ignorant if they don't.
You're one of those.
Yeah, I am one of those.
So not related to vehicles, but 1919, the first four-way tricolor traffic light is installed in Detroit, Michigan.
Of course it was Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah, Motor City, right?
Yeah, I wondered about talking about that. I left it off the list just because it wasn't a car, but yeah.
That
big
definitely
game
improved
changer.
safety, right? Because before that, it was just like, whew, whew, going through intersections.
So another great segue here, because it's, like 7 minutes in.
Segway City.
If we have a light...
Oh, I know where you're going to go.
Do you really? So we have a light and it has the turn arrow, right?
Yep.
And it's green and you get to go. What if it's red, the arrow's not lit up, but no one's coming the other way? You're still free to make a right-hand turn, right?
So I know Pennsylvania, unless otherwise indicated, you're allowed to make rights on red.
So no, unless there's the sign
unless
saying
it says no turn on red.
Okay.
So if there's no sign, you're allowed to make a red. And very little known fact, you can make a left on red onto a one-way as long as it doesn't indicate either. So if you're turning, like normally you can't.
What? Hold on, one more time?
So if you're at a red light
Uh-huh.
and it's red
Yeah.
and you're making a left onto a one-way street.
Oh,
And
well, how often
nobody's
does that happen?
Well, the West End Circle is a perfect example.
I hate
so
that place.
unless it says no turn on red, you can make a left onto a one-way on red as long as traffic's clear.
Wow.
Very little
that's
known.
asking for an accident.
I just sit there on the horn
I bet
whenever
you do.
people are just like, oh.
All right,
Sorry.
moving on. That's very
Moving
good
on.
information, though, Luke.
So, 1930, laminated
Hey, yeah.
safety glass becomes standard in all Ford vehicles. So previously, imagine you're driving in your Model A, your Model T, whatever it is, and like your windshield breaks. Basically, you would die from shards of just like regular glass.
That's
like,
exactly
driving
it.
through your body.
Right. You were driving around with just standard plate
Yeah.
glass windshields. What I said was, or what I saw written was, the glass would break into sharp dagger-like pieces,
Yeah,
and they would just like jab into you or
Yeah.
the people around you. That sounds terrible, right?
Yeah, so what they did to prevent this, and if you don't know what the lamination process is, it's basically just two pieces of glass that they sandwich together with an adhesive, clear adhesive, obviously clear adhesive. And then what happens is it's still glass and it still cracks, but because it doesn't crack in the exact same area, the glue holds the different pieces together, and that's why it kind of gets like wavy almost, like you could kind of crack it more and it all stays together.
I have a chunk out of my windshield for, how old's my truck? 2013,
Yep.
2014, something like
You
that.
still got a crack in it?
Yeah, like a stone hit it,
Okay.
and I've just never fixed it. It's been, what, 5, 6
Because usually
years?
it's just a top layer. If it doesn't go all the way through,
Yeah, it
you're
didn't
good.
go through, so I'm good. I have a bunch of information on the windshield
Shoot.
stuff. So in 1926, Stutz embedded horizontal wires into the windshield to minimize shattering. So that was like their first step in it.
Yep.
Another safety feature in 26 was that they had a low center of gravity, which reduced sway and rollover. And heavy steel running boards were designed to provide side impact protection. So these people were way ahead of their time, and they started advertising it as the safety Stutz, S-T-U-T-Z.
Stutz?
Yes, but at $2,995 smackers, it was too expensive for most
That
Americans.
seems like a lot of money back then.
Yeah, back then for sure. So a more effective solution, like you were talking about for the shatterproof or almost shatterproof windshield, was the sandwich of glass, just like you described it. And the triplex glass actually was standard equipment in the 1928 Ford Model A, and that came at a much lower price than the Safety Mobile or whatever it was called. So then the last thing that I wanted to talk about, and this is just a selfish shout out, is that General Motors installed shatterproof duplate windshields in 1930 in Cadillac vehicles because, big money spenders on those Cadillacs. Maybe I'll get a Cadillac someday.
The thing you find, and I saw this in some other research, is that pretty much all innovation, for the most part, happens with like the premium brands.
Higher end cars, and it rolls down,
and then it
trickles
eventually
down
like,
as it becomes affordable.
Like I remember the first time cars were getting airbags, and here I'm driving with this death trap that if I crash, I'm gonna eat the steering wheel and die. And people are driving in like Mercedes and BMWs with them, and you had to wait like 5 years, and it becomes standard equipment.
Right.
So
the reason I wanted to bring that up though is because the duplate was made by the Pittsburgh Safety Glass Company, which was owned by Pittsburgh Plate Glass and DuPont.
nice.
PPG, shout out.
I love Pittsburgh connections.
Speaking of Pittsburgh connections, let's take a break for a word from our sponsor.
I have to assume it's PPG.
PPG has ponied up the big nothing.
No.
We did not reach out to them, though, so I won't hold it against them.
Yeah.
We do not have a sponsor.
We
but
have shout-outs.
We do. We're back on the shout-out train.
Pow, pow.
I actually
love it.
went through 6 of my emails today. Went back to August. That's how long it's been. I'm sorry to all of
That's
you.
what happens when you take a month off.
I know. Jonathan S. likes the idea of an episode on heat exchangers, like shell and tube heat exchangers and other ones.
I
so
can hook 'em up.
added it to the list.
All my CFD skills.
I figured. Pat and or Paul S. It was signed by both, so maybe it's both.
Okay.
I don't know. Wrote in to let us know that fire was one of the greatest inventions. So if you listen to our top 10 inventions episode, fire was not listed, but it was stated at the beginning that we decided it was a discovery and not an invention. Now that I think back, I don't know the real difference, but that's what we decided. So I appreciate the write-in. We did clarify, but you're right.
did.
It's probably number 1 if you count it as an invention. And then there's Mark B, who really likes the 101 series.
Ooh, nice.
So maybe we should be doing more of those.
A few more of those.
They've actually performed pretty well.
Is that the that's one we were doing on
the
like
short ones
engineering
on
principles.
actual principles. Would like some stickers, and apparently Mark works at a university, so college students would be seeing them. They'd be architect students, but still.
But take everything we say on those 101 episodes with a grain of salt. It is called unprofessional engineering.
Way to just
for
cut
a
down
reason.
our credibility there, Luke. Thanks a lot.
Don't use our stuff as test preparation.
Yeah, that's probably pretty fair. So moving on. Oh, I guess we need to do the whole, hey, if you want stickers or you want shout-outs
Write
or
in.
you have ideas. Yeah, write in
unprofessionalengineering@gmail.com.
That's right. What should they do on iTunes?
I would subscribe. I'd like. I'd star. I'd review.
There you go.
All
or
of it.
wherever you listen,
Yeah.
but mostly iTunes.
I did it again last night on the Alexa app. She's going to turn on right now. I said, "Hey Alexa, play Unprofessional Engineering," and she started playing.
Is it the most recent
It always
episode?
does. It always does the most recent. So
Good
try
job.
it.
Try it, everyone. Keep those listens up. All right, so moving forward, let's see what you have in 34.
So 34, there's actually 2 big things that happen.
neat.
So first of all, GM conducts the first crash tests.
Oh, really?
And apparently it was at like 18
see
miles an
that.
hour or something like that. It was like some
Yeah, the
super
barrier
low
crash test.
some super low speed. It's like
Well,
I guess
They
the
only went
speeds of
19
vehicles.
miles per hour, so...
So that happened, and then also right here in Pennsylvania State College, the very
Penn State
first
University Park?
the very
Oh,
first
yeah.
student driver training program. So again, it's not
Really?
related to cars necessarily, but the training for cars. So that's where like the student driver training program started.
Just another great thing Penn State's done for the world. Number 2 on the list, student training for driving. Number 1 on the list, James Herzing. Boom.
Coming out of State College.
Coming out of State College. All right, so
Totally
what I
agree.
have here, and thank you, in the 1930s, I thought this was really interesting. Dr. Claire L. Straith, a Detroit plastic surgeon who specialized, this is terrible, in reconstructing the faces and skulls of automobile accident victims, began a one-man campaign to eliminate injuries caused by steel dashboards, the weird protruding knobs that existed in the car designs then. They had hook-shaped door handles that people would get caught on and get all busted up, and a bunch of other hazards inside. So he installed lap belts in his own cars, and he designed and patented a dashboard crash pad. And he became nationally known for his one-man safety campaign. Now, it took a while for a lot of this stuff to catch on, but American Tucker, I don't know what that is, but apparently it was a thing.
The Tucker. It was a car.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay. So it was provided with the first padded dashboard in 1947.
Yeah, there's actually a movie about I think the name of the movie is Tucker. It's this guy that wanted to make a safe
Is his
car.
name Tucker?
I think that was his last name.
Makes sense.
I think it was Tucker. Yeah.
Well, I thought that was really interesting because the padded dashboard is not something I would have ever considered as like vehicle safety or something that would have ever been a problem. But it totally makes sense when you look back.
No seatbelt.
Right. Well, that too.
So, fun fact, and I just wanted to ask you this. So, have you ever seen any of the Red Asphalt series?
Red Asphalt?
Have you heard of?
I've not heard of this.
Okay.
Should I have?
I watched them. So, Red Asphalt is it's a series of instructional driver videos produced by the California Highway Patrol.
Okay.
And these were ride-along videos of actual accidents.
Oh, no.
Like,
I don't need that.
people dismembered, like kids, motorcyclists, get it, red asphalt, blood on. And so
they don't still show those, do they?
in some cases they do. So all the way up until I think it was 2002, Red Asphalt 6 or 5 was the last one.
It's like Faces of Death, but different.
It started way back in, I think, 36 or
That's
something.
so weird.
So it goes way, way back, and they did 6 of these, and it was like standard viewing material for training classes for student drivers, and it was just like the most grotesque. It was terrible. So,
that sounds terrible.
It's not really a fun fact. It's more of a morbid fact.
That was a not so fun fact, I would call it.
Yeah.
Let me throw one out there for
Shoot.
you. And this is one of my last big detailed explanation things. So around this time in the 30s, Dr. Rolla Harger, a chemistry professor at Indiana University School of Medicine, constructed something very important, a blood alcohol measuring device that used a breath sample blown into a balloon. In 1936, this guy received a patent for his device, and he named it the Drunken Meter. Which
No, he didn't.
This isn't a joking matter, but man, he named it the Drunken Meter. Yeah, which is just amazing. It's the best name ever.
Good thing they changed it to Breathalyzer.
Yeah, for sure. And so in 1939, Indiana passed the first state law defining intoxication in terms of blood alcohol percentage. And the state officers routinely used the Drunken Meter to test it.
Nice.
So early in 1950, Robert Borkenstein, who was a state cop there, developed the Breathalyzer, which was a smaller, more portable version of the Drunken Meter, and it provided faster, more reliable results.
Okay.
So I thought that was a really interesting invention.
Yeah.
Again, not necessarily a car thing,
related
but
to car
super
safety.
safe. Yeah.
So 1949, the Chrysler Imperial is the first vehicle in the United States to come standard with 4-wheel disc brakes.
That's impressive.
So there are always
49.
drums before that,
Yeah.
and drums aren't necessarily, they heat up, they have issues, they don't have the
cop
stopping power.
No, that's the Victoria, the
yeah,
Crown
that's-
Victoria, not the Imperial.
So
Okay.
my truck still has drums on the back. So the only good thing about drum brakes that I know, and maybe someone would write in and tell us, but I've never changed them. I got 60,000 miles on my almost 70,000 miles on my truck, and I've changed my front brakes like 3-4 times, and I've never had to adjust. They're self-adjusting, I know that, But apparently they don't have the stopping power that disc brakes have.
Once you replace your disc brakes, they're terrible after that.
They're
Aren't
never
they?
the same.
They warp. They
Got to get
oh,
rotors
it's awful.
all the time.
Rotors are always terrible afterwards. Yeah, they're the worst. What else do you have moving on?
I got 1951.
Oh, let's hear it. That's about
Crumple
where I'm
zones were patented by Mercedes-Benz. These were designed so that in the event of a crash, rather than just like super rigid metal like being jammed into the occupant area of the vehicle, that that would stay structurally intact and stuff would break away and move away from where you were sitting.
Interesting.
Crazy that it was all the way back in 1951, because it seems like people were like dying left and right from impact. So maybe it just wasn't a good crumple zone, or maybe they didn't design it properly, but kind of crazy that it was 1951.
I think the concept of making something crumple probably I mean, it just didn't make sense. Like, you want it to be sturdy was probably the mindset.
Super strong,
like, it'll keep you safe, where realistically absorbing that impact is so much better for you. So before we get into the end of the 50s and then plow through the rest of the life
it
of
gets
vehicles,
kind of quick
it gets
after
kind of
that.
sparse. Let's take a break for this week's Luke's Rant.
Okay, so my rant is, it's all about these driver assist things that are on newer vehicles. So
none of mine.
Autopilot, right? This Tesla autopilot. You see all this stuff in the news about autopilot. Videos of people sleeping in their car at 60 miles an hour. Driverless cars, adaptive cruise control. And I guess this is more of a question than a rant. And maybe folks want to write in, or maybe you have an opinion on this.
I probably do.
Why don't we want to pay attention to when we drive? We have a multi-thousand-pound death implement that we're driving down the road.
I actually line mine with daggers to make it more dangerous.
And we just, yours looks like the Mad Max vehicle. It's like, why don't you want to pay attention? Why is it like, oh, I want to be, relaxed in my car, and I don't want to have to worry about braking if the person in front of me hits their brakes. It's like, no, of course you want to hit your brakes, you moron.
I think the problem is you need all vehicles on the we don't pay attention system,
or else it doesn't work.
Because then we have you putting your I'm worried braking on, which screws everything else up.
Yeah, I don't know when we got to this point where, like, so driving it's a pure privilege, right? It's not a right that you can. I mean, I feel like I don't know. It just seems like we're making driving like a privilege that everybody should have access to, and no matter what, everybody should have a car and should do everything for them. I feel like no, you got to pay for a car. You got to know what you're doing. You got to know the rules, the regulations, pay attention. I like
everything being on this auto thing, but the next 30 years or whatever it is until we get there scares me.
Yeah, because you'll have some people with autopilot, and then you'll have people like you with a big old pickup truck, and you're just jamming on the brakes to mess with people.
And I'm smashing them, on purpose with my Dagger mobile.
Yeah, so it's more of a question than a rant. I just don't know why people want driving to be easy.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay,
Sorry.
moving on. The UN got involved in things. Did you see that? Isn't that weird? I thought that was really strange.
United Nations?
Yeah, they created the World Forum for Harmonization of Vehicle Regulations. So it probably took them 3 years to come up with that name.
It did.
But it was all about trying to set up standards for automobile safety. So that was in 1958. So in 1959, a Volvo engineer invented the 3-point lap and shoulder seatbelt, becoming standard in all Volvos. Oh, that was in 1958, but in 1959 it became standard in all Volvos. There's some other thing.
Another Volvo before you move on?
Yeah, go ahead.
1969, they introduced the head restraint.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, and I guess I never knew what they did.
Was that 69 or 59?
68.
68?
1968. Okay. So, like, I remember being in cars without headrests. Like, growing up, my parents had, like, really old cars, and there'd be no headrest, and there'd be a bench seat in front. And I guess you don't think when you get hit, your head is like this big, 8-pound weight that's going to get flung back and forth and give you whiplash or some kind of neck problems.
Yeah.
But apparently, headrests, they serve a pretty, especially getting rear-ended, I think, is the big thing.
Well, I was really not confused, but I never thought of it as well. I thought it was a comfort thing. I didn't think it was ever not there, and it does make total sense.
Yeah.
Your head smacking around. Definitely makes sense that it's in there. I had a great story about Robert Kenneth Roberts. He was a representative, a congressman, we would say. He chaired the House subcommittee that investigated automobile safety issues. So anyways, his interest in motorist protection had sparked from a personal experience, Luke, and you know how I love personal experiences.
You love personal experiences.
During a honeymoon trip in 1953, Robert slowed for a truck because of that automatic driving stuff probably, and his car was rear-ended. When he checked the badly dented trunk, he was surprised to learn that all of his wedding gifts had made it. Even the china and crystal were unbroken, that his sweet mother-in-law had padded and wrapped in bubble wrap for him. He was among the first government officials who became convinced that packaging the passenger with seatbelts and other devices was key to reducing injuries. So
just wrap yourself in bubble wrap.
Yeah, big thanks to the mother-in-law right there. So thank you, mother-in-law. No? Okay. 1963 saw Nationwide offer its first incentive for wearing your seatbelt. I have no idea how that was enforced, but somehow they offered an incentive.
Like whenever I signed up, like I remember before, like cars had alarm systems, you could say, "Oh, I'm using the club," and
So you lied.
you would get like a $15 a month discount on your auto insurance because you're putting the remember the club.
I remember the club.
Yeah.
So you lied because you didn't use the club.
I never locked
Nobody
it.
was. Yeah. Oh, you just said it there.
I would put it on.
That's
and
smart.
just said it
I was
there.
told it was a pain. The club fell out of favor by the time I was driving, but I was told it was a pain to lock on and off.
1971.
Oh, let's hear it.
Chrysler again. The Chrysler Imperial is the first production vehicle to come standard with anti-lock brakes.
Ooh,
This was the
anti-lock
technology
brakes is
that
a big
allowed.
one.
It's a huge one. This was all about shorter stopping distances, making sure that cars, didn't, spin out on slippery surfaces. And it was Chrysler did a bunch of stuff here.
Yeah, they were good folk. I have 73.
What do you got?
GM was the first automaker to install airbags. Did you see that?
Yeah, I heard it didn't work too well, though.
Well, that was a big thing is, the airbags ended up being kind of dangerous as well. If you go all the way up to 88, and we can go back, Chrysler became the first one to install standard driver side airbags all the time. By 1988, federal law required dual front and driver airbags, but a series of fatalities caused by airbags smashing motorists in the face in the early 21st century made us have to redo some stuff there. And I think they're good now, but every once in a while you still hear about one of those.
Yeah, the Takata.
It just went off and
the
smashed
Takata
me.
airbag thing.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, and I don't know if this was just some kind of like reawakening of people's feelings about safety, but if you look, all this kind of the U.S. and the government got really involved in the 70s with safety, with making a lot of requirements on the automotive manufacturers. So previously, the automotive manufacturers were kind of like just one-upping other of what they were doing, and then I think what they saw was, oh, these are helping, so let's make this mandatory that all auto manufacturers do this. So tons and tons of stuff happened in the 70s, all with regards to vehicle regulations and safety issues.
I'm going to let you plow through the rest of yours. I have a few lesser-known safety things I want to talk about and some stats, but you go for it.
Okay, Chrysler becomes the first automaker in 1989 to make airbags standard in all vehicles. They're not even around anymore, are they, Chrysler? 1991, Volvo,
Fiat Chrysler.
again, Volvo is doing side impact protection. I remember these. So in 1992, Chrysler offered child-integrated safety seats.
Really?
So basically, the seat would fold down and turn into.
Well, that seems like a good
child seat.
idea.
Yeah, but they just didn't take off too well. I think people
now
didn't.
with the rules and the kids growing and the seats changing, and it's a racket.
Yeah,
Just
for sure.
Put them on the back of the truck like we used to.
1995, daytime running lights are now on most
nice.
vehicles to give better daylight visibility. 1998, side impact airbags
That's
or
big.
side curtain airbags.
I wonder if I have those.
I'm sure you probably do.
Maybe.
I
hope I
think.
don't ever have to know.
What else do we got? So Nissan in 2001 offers the first optional backup camera. I love that it's Nissan.
Yeah.
On the Infinity series. This allows you for greater visibility when parking in reverse. And it makes me think of the episode of, Larry David. What's the Curb Your Enthusiasm, where he tried parking the car with just the mirrors. It's like, why don't you use the backup camera?
I do love a backup camera.
2007, Volvo. So Volvo got really big into safety. Not that they haven't always been, but 2007, they introduced blind spot monitoring systems.
Yeah.
Those little blinker lights
Those
on your
are
side
cool.
mirrors.
Oh, I hate when it beeps at me.
Yeah. See, you can shut that off, I think. And then 2009, Volvo introduces emergency braking assist. So this is where you're driving and you're not paying attention again, and there's a little old lady in a walker, and it automatically applies
Back
the
to
brakes
Ireland.
for you.
It all comes full circle.
Yeah.
Is that about it for you?
Yeah, I got and then Toyota does some pre-collision similar to the emergency braking, and that takes me to like 2013, and then the rest of it is.
So I have a few lesser-known safety features I wanted to talk about.
Ooh,
Charles Adler Jr. developed the spaceometer, a gauge that showed how many car lengths should be maintained ahead of a car at various speeds. So it was just kind of like if you had your speedometer, like there was another circle inside that showed how many car lengths based off of your speed that you should.
Good idea. Knowing your braking and all that.
Yeah, it didn't really work so much.
Didn't take off.
The Cyber Light was a rear-mounted flashing light that showed how rapidly the car ahead was decelerating, so it gave you a better idea to understand how hard to brake.
I feel like that would be
It got replaced
distracting.
with just the solid brake light. The Drivo Trainer offered by insurance companies, which was kind of like playing a video game for driver training. My driver training teacher, when we'd do on-road training, just had us drive him around to do all of his errands. That was all our training was, which was amazing.
Well, it's St. Mary's.
Yeah, and so there were a few others, but I did want to give a call or a shout-out to some famous crash test dummies.
I saw this.
Vince and Larry. Do you remember Vince and Larry?
1985, right?
Yeah, the National Highway Traffic Administration decided to use advertising to promote safety belt use, which is pretty cool.
Do you remember any of the? Did you see?
I remember
you did?
the commercials of them. Another famous crash test dummy is the Canadian rock band. They had the song.
Oh yeah.
It is real weird. But famous crash test dummies.
Different.
That is very different. I do have some stats for you.
Shoot.
I have all sorts of them, but I'll just throw a few out here since we're running out of time. Nearly 1.25 million people die in road crashes each year.
That's crazy.
That's a lot. That's worldwide. Way lower in America.
Yeah, because all the safety
for us. But still, that's a ton. Each year, nearly 400,000 people under 25 die on the world's roads. That's an average of 1,000 a day. Speaking of people dying, 37,000 people die in crashes each year in America. So that's still a lot. In addition, 2.35 million are injured in America. Over 1,600 children under 15 die each year in America. And it keeps going. Drinking and driving. In 2016...
I heard we're getting better, though.
I heard we're getting better as well. In 2016, 10,497 people died in alcohol-impaired driving crashes.
That amazes me.
Accounting for 28% of all traffic-related deaths in the U.S. That's a lot.
That enrages me almost.
Another intoxication-related thing, marijuana use is increasing, and 13% of nighttime weekend drivers have marijuana in their system.
That can't be good.
That's a lot.
Because that kills your reaction time,
I
right?
wouldn't possibly know, but it sounds like it would kill your reaction time.
That's terrible.
Though I know some people who say that it makes them much more alert and focused on what they're doing. But, that probably sounds like I'm a better driver when I drink.
That's the opposite of all science related to marijuana and how it affects your system.
So last but not least, cell phones and driving.
Yeah, this is bad news.
The National Safety Council reports that cell phone use while driving leads to 1.6 million crashes each year. Nearly 390,000 injuries occur each year from accidents caused by texting and driving. 1 out of every 4 car accidents in the U.S. is caused by texting and driving, which is just awful. Texting while driving is 6 times more likely to cause an accident than drinking and driving. How terrible is that?
Yeah.
21% of teen drivers involved in fatal accidents were distracted by their cell phones. And teen drivers are 4 times more likely than adults to get into car crashes or near crashes while talking or texting on the cell phone.
That's my biggest fear as a father.
Yeah.
Knowing that she could be texting while she's driving, but I know there's apps where like it senses that the phone is in a car and it actually won't let the phone do anything,
right?
Because the GPS or whatever knows it's moving.
I know mine popped up a few times saying it seems like you're driving. Should we not let this happen? And I was like, shut up and let me answer this. I was actually a passenger in Vegas when it happened the first time, but now I just text anyways because I'm a bad person. But there's also another stat about, like, even for teens, if they have one person or multiple people, like multiple friends in the car,
increases.
how, like, drastically increases chances of
That's
accidents.
why I've told you this. My daughter's getting a Jeep Wrangler, and I'm going to remove the back, because you can take the back seats out of a Jeep, and she can only have one passenger in her vehicle.
Yeah, I think that's not a bad idea. That's super scary and a depressing way to end this one, but hopefully everybody learned something about the history of car safety. There's a ton more we could have covered.
Yeah.
I think we got most of the big ones, though.
I think we did, too.
And we've talked about self-driving enough that they can watch those episodes or listen to those. All right. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. I really did. I'm all about the car safety. That's why I drive a big truck. Until next time.
Drive safe.